Okay, welcome back to the next part of the video. Let me unpause. In the last video, we brought the XR2 up off the landing pad, got it into orbit around the moon, and we set up our maneuver for going back to Earth, completed the trans-Earth injection burn, and our timing was pretty good. The moon is in a position where it just did pass over the orbital plane of the ISS a little bit ago. So our timing on the burn was pretty good. It could have been better, but it was quite good nonetheless. So now what we need to do is we need to warp time forward to get over to Earth. And actually going to do it a little bit differently than I did the last time I did this, simply for the fact that the last time I did this, I learned something new. Normally when I do this this moon to Earth journey, I typically think that the best time to do your mid-course correction is when your transx plan ends, when it updates, and that happens when you get to the point where the moon's gravitational influence is about 0.02 or 0.03. But I've actually found out, discovered the last time I did this, that that isn't necessarily the best time to do the burn, to do the mid-course correction. So let's reference Earth, and we're going to be at periapsis at Earth in 190,000 seconds, although it doesn't mean a whole lot at the moment because things are going to change. But let's also bring up line plane MFD. Let's reference the Earth, and let's target the ISS. Now, let's warp time out.
Rotation.
And a couple things I'm looking at is when I'm going to cross the nodes here. Got to 1,000. According to line plane MFD, we're actually coming up to one of our nodes already. Let me think about this for a second. I'm guessing we're going to want to skip that. Yeah, we're definitely going to want to skip that and go to the next one. So we at least need we need to get away from the moon a little bit. We can't rush things too much here, so we're going to skip that because we're still relatively close into the moon here. Gravitational influence 0.12, so we haven't even broken away from the moon. Actually, that's the Earth. Yeah, 0.6, so we definitely need to get out away from the moon a little bit more, a lot more, before we worry about any kind of corrections here.
Translation.
So I'm going to say at least that part isn't going to change. We're going to get at least far enough away from the moon for the plans to update. But after that, the exact timing of the burn, we'll see. It's to be determined. Warping time forward faster to get out, 0.04. So here any moment you'll see this plan update. .03. And there, it's updated. So let's kind of come back to real time for a moment and see how things are looking. Now we can definitely reference Earth. In orbit MFD, we are 267,000 seconds away from periapsis. This number actually has meaning now. And let's bring up line plane MFD, and it's saying we're 266,000 seconds away from the node. Now, let me bring up an external MFD because I'm not good at remembering numbers from 1 second to the next. Okay, we've got Earth referenced. Let's make sure we don't make any mistakes there. We've got Earth referenced in a line plane, targeting the correct object, which is the ISS. Okay, so we're going to reach periapsis in 267,000 seconds, but we're not going to reach the node for 266,000 seconds. So basically, when we're just 1,000 seconds away from periapsis, then we're going to reach the node. This is a case where I would want to bring the node closer to my current position. But let's warp time forward at 100 and just see how our numbers are shaping up. Because it may just be the case that we did this moon to Earth plan so well. Well, it's our relative inclination is going up. And you can see here, according to the maneuver, well, according to Transx, our orbit back at Earth has dropped. You know, remember it was out here, now it's dropped, and I knew that would happen. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say I want to do for this flight. I want to bring myself closer to the ascending node, because I'm not going to reach periapsis until I'm just 3,000. I'm not going to reach the descending node. I'm not going to reach a node, rather, until I'm only 3,000 seconds away from periapsis. I'd rather reach the node when I'm closer to where I'm at now. So what I'm going to do, copy the Earth information over to the HUD. And I'm going to rotate so that I'm facing the descending node.
Translation. Rotation.
Which is orbit plus. Now I'm going to put in just a tap of translation to verify that this number comes down as I do that. It's also going to raise my relative inclination ever so slightly, but I want to bring myself closer to the ascending node. Yeah, that's coming down. You can also see the line of nodes in Transx swinging around, getting closer to the green line. So that's my current position. So now we've got a difference of like 7,000 seconds. It's not really enough, but let's warp time forward, go out a little more. I can see my PEA is going up also, so I don't necessarily need to worry about my orbital altitude at the moment. But I'm way off from the ISS, so I'll need to do some kind of maneuver for that. Okay, so let's look at things here. We're 237,000 seconds away from periapsis, and we're 205,000 seconds away from the ascending node, and this number appears to be coming down faster than that number. So we're going to be at least, 30,000 seconds away from periapsis by the time we reach the node. I'm going to say that's going to be enough time. So let's go ahead and warp time forward. See PEA going up, which is actually a good thing. That's what I want. time to the node counting down much more rapidly than that. So by the time we get over to the ascending node, we'll have tons of time until we get over to periapsis. The only remaining thing that needs to definitely be changed is that we need to delay ourselves from getting back to Earth ever so slightly so that the ISS can catch up. Gravitational influence of Earth is 0.42. We're 185,000 seconds away from periapsis, 183,000. Now we're 112,000 seconds away, so we're 70,000 seconds between that number and that number, roughly. Periapsis is almost at the surface. So now it's going to climb. We'll probably have to bring it down a bit, because I'm guessing that that's going to be much higher than 70 kilometers by the time we get all the way back to Earth, given the speed at which it's increasing. I have no idea where that whistle came from. 64,000 seconds away from the node. Yeah, we're going to want to bring our periapsis down a bit, most likely. We're now within the point, we're now at the point where Earth's gravity is the strongest influence. I think I've got enough information to go on. I'm going to go ahead and warp time forward over to the node. And we're just about there. Well, we're not. Now we're just about there. So let's do this. We're going to set up a maneuver because I believe TransX actually gives us a more accurate number for the amount of delta V that we're going to use, as opposed to doing our calculation. Let's do both. So according to our calculation, we take relative inclination, which is 5.9, divided by 2 times, or rather than press the send button, times 2 times orbital velocity, which is 1387. And according to that calculation, we need 142.76 meters per second of delta V in order to bring the relative inclination down to 0. But I don't believe that actually works. I don't believe that calculation is correct when you're doing it this way. So let's set up a TransX maneuver. Turn maneuver mode on. And we're going to go to the change plane variable. And for some reason, TransX seems to be backwards on this. I would think that we need negative plane change because we're coming up to the ascending node, but TransX seems to always be backwards on that. So we're going to add in positive, and you'll notice it's so subtle, it's hard to see it, but you just saw the line of nodes jump just like that. So I went to a finer setting, and now I'm going to put in some negative plane change, and you saw it jump again. So now I'm going to go to an even finer setting and put in some positive. And we know we're in plane when that line of nodes is swinging like that all the way down to the hyper setting. And we want it to be at about a 90-degree angle to our green line, and that's how we know we're in plane. So according to TransX, and I believe this is right, this is only going to cost us 37 meters a second. Now let's press VW to get over to view target, and we want to be orbit minus, and the autopilots work because we are close enough to the Earth that we have the Earth as the dominating gravitational influence, as indicated here. You know, G 0.63 is more than 0.63 5-0, so it's the strongest influence. Okay. Now, I would like to actually set up a couple of different directions of movement here at once, but I'm almost thinking I'll be better off if I do them separately, because I also want to add in a little bit of outward in order to delay myself from getting back to Earth ever so slightly. Let's just see what happens if we do that. Go ahead and turn that off for now. By adding in some outward, it's affecting my plane a bit. I'm going to have to do something about that. That's a lot of outward. I mean, relatively. Gotta go the other way. It's not really any better. Let me try this instead. Let's reset. And instead of using outward, let's just see what happens if we slow ourselves down using prograde. Okay, it's bringing our orbital path down a bit. I'm surprised it's taking that much. Okay, so outward was better. Again, what I'm doing here is, when we get back to the Earth, it's saying that the ISS is going to be on the opposite side of the planet, and I don't want that. I want the ISS to be right where we're at. So unfortunately, that's going to cost us 82 meters per second, apparently. And now we got the plane where we need it. But where is the orbital altitude? I can't really tell at the moment. So do a bit of an adjustment with prograde. That's going the wrong way. I'm trying to bring the hypothetical orbital altitude down. Alright, I've lost track of where it's at, so let me reset. Still got several minutes till I get to the node, so I'm fine. Go back to outward. And take away some of this outward so I can keep track of the orbital altitude. Okay, there it is. So now prograde. Okay, so minus prograde brings that down. Excuse me, I do again apologize for the throat problems that I have. Okay. Something more like that. Now a little bit of refinement on the plane change. Unfortunately, I don't know if it needs to be plus or minus. Second needs to be minus, so... Okay, so that has us in plane. That has the ISS very close to our current position when we get back to the Earth. And it's saying that our orbital altitude is actually a little bit below the Earth's surface according to that, but it's going to change because we're still a ways out. But I will see if I can bring it up a tad. And we'll just leave it there. Okay, so 90 degrees to the green line, something like that. Alright, hopefully all this makes sense. I realize it's a little confusing, but I guess I can go to 0.1 for a moment and try to explain everything that I'm doing here. So I'm coming up to the ascending node, and as I cross over the node, I want to bring my relative inclination down. But I also need to bring the... I also need to do a maneuver that will bring the ISS's position closer to where I'll be when I get back to the Earth, because without doing some kind of adjustment, the ISS would be on the opposite side of the planet, and we don't want that. So that we're basically doing those two things. But I'm also doing the prograde, because making the adjustment to the outward was sending my orbital altitude so far off that I needed to do a prograde adjustment also. So that's what I'm doing. Now let me go over to view target.
Rotation.
And get completely lined up here. Just gonna be interesting to line this one up, because we're doing all three directions of movement. Okay, now getting ready to do the burn here in just a few seconds. And we'll start it now. So that's bringing the relative inclination down. It's raising the PEA. Actually, it's lowering the PEA. Main thing I'm worried about is the relative inclination. I feel like I can adjust the other ones.
Translation. Rotation.
And I'm actually going to watch the relative inclination. I'm not even going to pay attention to the delta V. When that is 0, I'll stop the burn. But hopefully it'll be when that is 0 also. But if it's not, we won't worry about the delta V.
Translation.
Okay. And that worked out. We've got a 0.00 relative inclination, and we've got a delta V that was almost, 0.00 as well. So we did our maneuver, I would say, exactly correct. Now, we will turn maneuver mode off. And I'm actually going to Control S to save here, even though we're going to continue to push forward. But this will be a good point to save, because if I make any mistakes after this, I can pick up back from here. Now, a couple things I want to watch as I move forward I want to watch what's happening with my periapsis. Is it going up or down? Hopefully it's going, up closer to 0. It is. But more importantly, I want to make sure that my relative inclination stays at 0.00 from this point forward. And I know that if I just warp time forward at 100 or 1,000, that's not going to be the case. As I discovered when I did this last time, you can keep yourself at a 0.00 relative inclination by making various adjustments as you go forward. So you can see it's slipping already. It's 0.01, and we're kind of hugging the ascending node. So here's how I'm going to correct that. I'm going to go to the prograde position, not being very fuel efficient in doing it, but I'm getting lazy, I guess. And I know we've got plenty of fuel. So since the relative inclination is off in this direction, I'm going to hug the descending node instead. And then as I move forward, the relative inclination, instead of going up, 0.01, 0.02, and so on toward the ascending node, since I'll be erroring on that side, it will actually go down closer to 0. And here's how I'm going to do that.
Rotation. Translation.
Let me think, do I need to translate up or down? I want to be toward the descending node, so I want 2. Nope, that's wrong. Okay, so I'm going to put in 0.05, so I'm hugging the descending node. Now I believe as I go forward, you'll see that getting closer to 0. Yeah. So that's how I can make sure that my relative inclination stays at 0.00. I just have to keep offsetting it toward that side as I go forward. Now 0.03, 0.02, 0.001, and we're back to 0.00. And now it's going to flip around to the ascending node, so I need to offset again more toward that side.
Rotation.
And then watch my PEA to kind of see what it's doing. I want to arrive at Earth with a PEA of about 70 kilometers, somewhere between 68 and 70.
Translation.
Okay, so I'm adding in a little bit of translation. We'll go back to 0.05 on that side. Then as I go forward, it'll get closer to 0.00.
Rotation.
We'll rotate, go forward. Watching the PEA, watching the relative inclination. Okay, you can see we're back to 0.00. Now it's going to go the other way, so we'll offset again.
Translation.
And let's put in a little more offset because we still got a little ways to go. We just don't want to overdo the offset because we get to a point where we don't need it anymore. So if we put in too much at one time, then it won't come all the way to 0.00. It doesn't have to either. I mean, we can have it off a little bit, but I like things to be perfect if they can be. Okay, so kill rotate. And we'll warp time forward. Watching PEA, watching relative inclination, sort of somewhat keeping an eye on the ISS's position, but I think that part's going to be fine. I think we're going to have to raise our PEA a bit. We're down to 0.75 gravitational influence. This number is getting very reliable at this point. Okay, We're almost at 0.00. Okay, we're at 0.79, so let's raise our PEA a little bit, and the way we're going to do that is by translating outward a little bit. We're going to push ourselves away from Earth. So there's the Earth. We're going to put in lateral translation that way. And that's going to affect our timing here at Earth, by the way, because we're basically adding in some outward. So we're slowing ourselves down a little bit. But it's actually okay. You can see our closest approach is actually coming down. Doesn't much matter. We'll go for 0. Maybe even 10 kilometers, because remember, it's still climbing. And if we want to just avoid all this guesswork altogether, we can go to... We can bring up IMFD. Bring up map. And we're already referencing Earth, and according to map MFD, our PEA back at Earth is going to be 13 kilometers, and this is correct. So we can actually avoid all the guesswork of orbit MFD and transx and just set it according to IMFD, and we'll put it at 68.5. Right there, and I know that this is going to be within a few meters of being exactly correct, because IMFD is, you know, its math model is more accurate. Okay, so we don't have to worry about altitude anymore. Now we've got a relative inclination 0.00.
Rotation.
Kill rotate. Let's go forward a little bit farther. You can see we're still favoring the ascending node, so let's not rotate.
Translation.
Let's translate. And we're just going to go 0.03 because we're getting relatively close. We don't want to overdo it. 44,000 seconds away from periapsis. And when we're down to, say, 10,000 seconds from periapsis, we will save at that point and then end this part, and then we'll pick up in the next part where we actually get over to Earth and do the atmospheric braking. So here we are, back to 0.00, continuing to swing in favor of the ascending node.
Rotation. Translation.
So we'll translate the other way down to 0.03 again. Let's actually go 4. And we'll warp time forward. Got to 1,000. Watching the time to periapsis. Gravitational influence 0.9. Time to periapsis about 10,000. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Let's go ahead and get to the point where our relative inclination has got all the way to 0.00 though. If that's even going to happen, and it's not, so we'll go with that. We're 5,000 seconds out. So we're almost there. Okay, let's close that. Let's Control S. So we'll save it here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do any more recording tonight, but we're all the way basically back to Earth, and you can see clearly, you know, we've learned a lot for over the last experience, because now we're arriving at Earth with the relative inclination almost perfect instead of, you know, 7 degrees, and you know, that was just a major mistake last time. If you have any questions about this, and that's a lot to take in, so you may need to watch this video and even the other one a couple of times, because there's something to be learned from watching the last one. Even though it didn't work out as cleanly as this one's working out, there's still a lot to be learned by watching it. But if you have any questions about this, go ahead and leave those questions down below. You know, and if you want to try this for yourself, you'll probably run into quite a few things that are just confusing, but you know, keep at it, you'll figure it out. It's a pretty cool trip to make, you know, coming back from the moon and arriving in plane with the ISS. It's something that's you know, a good exercise in my opinion. If you liked the video, leave a comment down below, and I will see you in the next part.